everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at the Canon Vixia Mini X. And this is a rather uniquely shaped camcorder that I believe is actually the second iteration of this form factor. The first thing you notice is that the viewfinder is on the top of the camera. It does flip up and flip back, and you can also move it into selfie mode so you can shoot yourself while you're looking at your face on camera. It has a couple of controls on the side here, most notably a microphone level control, and that's the only manual control it really has because they have put on two rather, I guess, better than normal high-quality microphones on the front of the camera, stereo microphones, so you can record good quality audio. I think they're kind of focusing this camera at musicians that do a lot on YouTube that are just starting out. It's a way to get some decent audio without having to futz around with a whole bunch of different devices. So I think that might be the focus of what this camera is after. Power in, headphones, and a microphone in jack, which is always good to have the external audio. On the other side, a record button, the mode button to switch it into play mode. And you can also do that from the viewfinder, which is a touch screen. And then you have an HDMI port, which will output video and audio that's really untouched by the camera, which is a really nice thing, especially if you do what I do, which is hook your cameras up to either a recorder separately or into a video switcher. It's nice to really just get that raw video over the wire and not have a lot of processing delays that would mess up lip sync and other things. So I was happy to see that. And there's also a USB port there as well. On the bottom, you've got a tripod mount, but you also have this little stand here that you can kick out, like a little kickstand. And the camera is very adjustable with a whole bunch of different angles that best fit your preferences. And that's kind of a neat thing. That's the highest point it'll go, and you can just keep going. It has a lot of resistance to it, so you can pretty much position it anywhere. There's no real stops there. You just kind of put it exactly where you want it to go, and it'll hold there. And then, of course, it'll snap back in. On the side here is the power switch, and when you flip it on, you get the lens cover off in one motion. And what's nice, sort of, is that it's a really good fisheye lens, and it's comparable to what you would get with a GoPro or one of those other action cameras, except this has good audio, which a lot of those action cameras don't have. So it's certainly not going to survive being thrown off a mountain or whatever, but if you're looking for a fisheye lens with decent audio, this will certainly do it for you. And you'll see in a minute that the ability to turn off the fisheye is there, but it's not all that good. Now, the camera records to standard SD cards, and you have a choice of shooting in AVC HD mode or using MP4 files, which are sometimes a little bit easier to work with, but the AVC HD mode gives you a little bit more flexibility, especially if you're using editing software. And I should note that the AVC HD mode is the only mode that will support the uncompressed audio that this camera has as one of its primary features. So let's take a look at the camera itself, and you can see we've got a pretty big fisheye lens here. And what they say is that it'll give you a 51-degree angle of view when you're in AVC HD mode, and a little bit more, I think a 64-degree mode when you're in MP4. And that's just basically how the resolution pans out based on how they're recording off the chip. So still, this is pretty wide as it is. You can see it gets a little distorted in the middle because it is a fisheye lens. And this is one thing I want to point out too, is that it's really hard to focus this camera because there is no manual focus controls. So you really have to look at the screen, but the screen resolution isn't all that great, so it's really hard to tell. I went outside with it and recorded some flowers around the yard. Even in macro mode, you're really not sure when you're too close to something, and that was kind of a frustration. It was really hard to keep it focused appropriately. If people were far enough away or things were far enough away, it was fine, but if you wanted to get in and get detail, it was really hard to work with it, especially because I couldn't do a manual focus. Now, there is no zoom on this either, so what I'm going to do here is push this button at the bottom, which will basically switch it into the standard non-fisheye mode. And look how far it zooms in, and that's it. You can't control this at all. So you have this mode or that one, but there's nothing in between. So if you want a non-fisheye image, you'll get that. And notice the image quality takes a dive also, and I think it's because it's doing some zooming onto the chip there, maybe not necessarily a digital zoom, but basically how it's reading off the chip. And I just really wasn't impressed with this at all. I think if you're going to use this, maybe leave it in that fisheye mode. So here is the main interface of the camera that you'll see while you're shooting. You notice down here the audio levels are up here all the time, which is really nice to see, but that really is the only good manual control on this camera, unfortunately. So you can go up here and switch it into programmed auto exposure mode, P mode, As you can see, the touchscreen is very hard to work with. And you can put it into that mode, which presumably gives you controls over the aperture, the brightness, and some other settings, but you can't get at them from the main screen. So you have to still dig through menus to go back out and bring those controls up. And that was kind of a disappointment. It would have been nice to have everything here in one spot. The mic level, of course, you can switch right on the top screen. So having those other features there would have been nice. It also would have been nice to be able to focus by touching on the screen, because it does have a touch screen after all, but you can't do that either. Video quality on the camera is okay. I wasn't blown away by it. It's certainly passable. I think the lens being as wide angle as it is kind of takes away some of those fine details that you would get in other cameras. And again, I had that issue when I got up close to things. It was hard to figure out what was in focus and what wasn't based on the low resolution of the screen, and really how hard it was to look at it out of doors to get that kind of detail. Now, the camera lacks a remote control, but there is an app available for the iOS and Android platforms. But as you can see, it is horrible. It's so slow to respond to anything. It takes a while for an action to actually show up on the screen. So it's really hard to kind of do anything precise with it. But I suppose it does work in the sense that you can at least hit the record button. There is a way to connect to it remotely over the web as well. Also a bit of configuration involved with it, but you could presumably hit the record button from a greater distance if you didn't have direct access to the camera. But this app is of minimal use, and it really is just a start and stop device, and it's not going to be all that precise. So how do these stereo mics sound? Well, they actually sound pretty good. You're listening to them right now. They don't isolate sound all that well because I had a water heater going down here in my basement studio earlier. Now, my cardioid mic that I use for my lavalier here never picks that up, but this did. You could hear some of that noise in the background. So I think if you're looking for really quiet audio in a noisy space, this is probably not going to do it for you. You're going to definitely want to bring in that external audio. But from a quality standpoint, I think it sounds a little bit better than many of the camcorders that I've tried out there. And I think that's kind of the focus of this device, is to maybe up the game a little bit on audio. Another good sign is that my lips are in sync as you're watching this right now, and that tells me that there's not a lot of crazy processing going on as that audio is passed through the HDMI port. So that is the Canon Vixia Mini X. And one of the things that I struggle with as a product reviewer is trying to figure out who the product is really geared for. And I try to look at things from the standpoint of what's a general consumer product. Is this it? No. Is it a good product? Absolutely, because it's a Canon camcorder, and every Canon camcorder I've used has been excellent. So it has features that I think appeal to probably prosumers, people that are doing maybe quasi-professional work like I am. What I like most about it for me is that it's passing uncompressed audio and video through the HDMI, and that makes a big difference when plugging it into my video system and doing the sorts of things that I do down here in my studio. For consumers who are just looking for a camera to record, daily life and that sort of thing, this is not very good for that because it lacks a zoom, which is a critical feature that comes in just about every camcorder and bridge camera and point and shoot out there. And it's pretty much a wide-angle camera. So if you're not looking for a wide-angle fisheye shot all the time, this is not going to do it for you. You can, of course, as you saw, put it out of that mode, but you lose image quality and it gets zoomed in really far, and there's just not a lot of flexibility in the usage there. I do think it's probably good for musicians that are first starting out, maybe making YouTube videos and recording themselves in a quiet room. The mics are definitely pretty good, as you heard. I thought the sound quality was good out of those mics, so it's good for that. And I like the fact that you can do some creative shots, just given how the camera is designed. It's really flexible in how the screen operates, how you can hold it, how you can put it on a desk at an angle like this. I mean, without a tripod, I think that's kind of a neat thing. You can just pop it down on a table and kind of get a shot that you might be looking for. So there's some good things for prosumers and people that have a specific use that this might fill, but for the rest of the world, maybe not. So that is the Canon Vixia Mini X, and this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.